It was a balmy summer evening when my sister, Serena, decided to throw the engagement party of the year. She had spared no expense, renting out a sprawling estate with a fountain that sprayed water in delicate arcs, fairy lights strung through ancient oaks, and waitstaff bustling about in crisp uniforms. Serena stood in the center of it all, a living embodiment of perfection in her shimmering lavender gown, her diamond ring catching the light as she waved at her guests like a queen greeting her subjects, and there I was, holding a tray of champagne flutes like a hired help. Serena, in her infinite grace, had decided that her little sister should be given the honor of serving drinks at her engagement party. "It's just for a few hours," she said with a dismissive wave earlier that week. "You're not exactly contributing to the party otherwise, are you?" "Of course, Serena." Always a way with words, I'd been biting my tongue around her for years, but that night, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the way she'd laughed too loudly when I spilled water during setup. Maybe it was the little smirk she gave as she introduced me to her friends as the server. Or maybe it was just years of pent-up frustration bubbling to the surface. Whatever the reason, I decided it was time to give her a dose of reality and chaos. Enter Ethan, her golden boy fiancé. Ethan, who always wore a polite smile but rarely spoke more than a sentence to me. Ethan, who looked at Serena like she was the sun, moon, and stars. And who, I suspected, had no idea what he was getting himself into. I grabbed a napkin and a pen from the bar, my hands shaking slightly as I scribbled out a note. "Ethan, before you commit your life to Serena, ask her about her trip to Paris last year. Ask her about Marco." I folded the napkin and slipped it into my apron. Now, I just needed the right moment. The party was in full swing, the air filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft strains of a live string quartet. Serena was in her element, glowing under the admiration of her friends and family. Ethan stayed close to her side, his hand resting lightly on her back, his eyes scanning the crowd with a mix of pride and trepidation. I saw my chance when Serena drifted away to mingle. Ethan stood alone, looking slightly out of place among the glittering throng. Balancing my tray carefully, I approached him, offering a champagne flute with a practiced smile. "Thanks, He trailed off, clearly unsure of my name. "Your fiancé's sister," I said, setting the glass on the tray. "Enjoy the party." As I turned to leave, I deftly slipped the folded napkin into his hand. His brows knit in confusion, but he tucked it into his jacket pocket without a word. I retreated to the edge of the party, my heart pounding. Would he read it? Would he confront her? Would I finally get to see Serena's perfect world crack? It didn't take long. Ethan's expression darkened as he read the note, his lips tightening into a thin line. He looked around the party, his eyes narrowing as they landed on Serena. She was laughing with a group of friends, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind her. Ethan marched over to her, napkin in hand. I edged closer, pretending to refill glasses as their voices rose above the polite hum of the party. "Serena," Ethan said, his voice tight. "What's this about Paris and someone named Marco?" Serena's laugh faltered, her eyes darting to the napkin. "Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb with me," he snapped. "Is it true? Were you with someone else?" The surrounding guests began to notice, their conversations dwindling as they turned to watch the scene unfold. Serena's cheeks flushed, her composure cracking for the first time that night. "Ethan, let's talk about this privately," she hissed, grabbing his arm. But he shook her off, stepping back as though her touch burned him. "No. We'll talk about it now," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Did you cheat on me?" The crowd gasped. Serena's eyes filled with tears, her carefully constructed mask of perfection slipping away. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Ethan's face hardened. "That's what I thought." He tossed the napkin onto the ground and turned on his heel, striding toward the exit. "Ethan, wait." Serena called after him, stumbling in her heels as she tried to follow. But he didn't stop. The guests parted like the Red Sea, whispering amongst themselves as Serena's world crumbled around her. As she chased after him, her gown caught on a low table, yanking her back and sending a cascade of champagne glasses crashing to the ground. Gasps erupted from the crowd as Serena's heel twisted, sending her tumbling into a centerpiece filled with water and orchids. The delicate flowers scattered across the floor, their petals bruised and broken, mirroring the chaos of the evening. The silence was deafening as Serena struggled to her feet, her face burning with humiliation. Just as she regained her balance, one of the elderly guests, a stern-faced woman clutching a cane, cleared her throat loudly and remarked, "Well, that's one way to make an exit." A ripple of awkward laughter broke out among the guests. Serena shot the woman a glare that could have melted steel before storming off toward the house, her head held high despite her trembling hands. Meanwhile, Ethan's path to the exit was blocked by one of his groomsmen, a burly man named Todd who'd clearly had too much to drink. "Hey, man, don't let her get to you," Todd slurred, throwing a heavy arm around Ethan's shoulders. "Plenty of fish in the sea, right?" Ethan shrugged him off, his jaw clenched. "Not now." Todd, undeterred, stumbled after him. "You're better off, trust me." "She's..." he hiccuped. "High maintenance." Ethan turned sharply, his eyes blazing. "Back off, Todd." The exchange drew more attention, and whispers rippled through the crowd. Sensing the tension, another groomsman intervened, pulling Todd away with a sheepish apology. As Ethan finally made his way out, Serena's best friend, Claire, appeared at my side, her face a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Did you have something to do with this?" she asked, her voice low but pointed. I shrugged, feigning innocence. "Why would you think that?" Claire studied me for a moment, then shook her head. "Unbelievable," she muttered before walking off to find Serena. The party began to dissolve after that, the once vibrant atmosphere replaced by an air of discomfort and unease. Guests trickled out, murmuring polite goodbyes and exchanging knowing looks. As I stood by the fountain, watching the chaos wind down, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. Had I gone too far? Maybe. But for the first time in years, I felt like I'd stepped out from Serena's shadow and taken control of the narrative. The cool night air wrapped around me as I walked toward the driveway, the distant sound of crickets filling the silence left by the party's collapse. I didn't know what the future held for Serena and Ethan, but one thing was certain: this engagement party would be remembered for years to come.